I've never talked about this before. Not to friends, not to family, and definitely not on camera. But I'm telling it now because I think someone needs to hear it. If even one person listens and decides to stay away, then maybe it's worth dragging it all back up. It happened 4 years ago, almost to the day. We were filming a documentary. Low budget, self-funded, stupid. It was supposed to be about coastal disappearances along the eastern seaboard. You know, local legends, missing hikers, those weird wood carvings found washed up in Maine, that kind of thing. The whole forgotten places genre was taking off and we wanted in. The place we picked for our pilot episode was called Langdon Beach. Don't bother looking for it on a map. The state removed it years ago. The GPS won't take you there. But it existed. I know that for a fact. The locals didn't want us going. That should have been our first clue. Every small-town sheriff, diner waitress, gas station attendant, they all gave us the same warning. Stay off that shore, it takes things. But we laughed it off. We had cameras, a drone, 2 weeks of supplies, and no clue what we were getting into. Our crew was small. There was me, Jason, director, host, the guy you'd see on screen. Then there was Amy, our sound tech. She'd been with me on 4 other projects, rock steady. And finally there was Chris, our cameraman. Young, cocky, and always humming some god-awful EDM remix under his breath. We parked at the last known trailhead, overgrown, mostly reclaimed by the forest, and hiked in 6 miles with full gear. The path was barely visible. You could tell no one had come through in a long time. Trees leaned low, branches caught your clothes, and the air got heavy the closer we came to the water. Then we saw it. Langdon Beach. It was beautiful at first, untouched. Wide open sand, cliffs covered in creeping ivy, an old lighthouse in the distance that didn't appear on any of our charts. The water was calm, glassy even, too calm. No gulls, no waves, just the hush of wind. We set up camp 50 yards from the shoreline. That night, Amy told me she heard singing. She said it was faint, like a woman humming just out of reach. I didn't hear it. Neither did Chris. We teased her about it, called it mermaid syndrome. But she didn't laugh. She kept looking at the ocean like it owed her an explanation. The footage we shot the next day is gone now, but I remember every second of it. We interviewed each other, did a few takes walking down the beach, threw in some moody shots of the clouds building over the cliffs. It was supposed to rain, but it never came. The clouds just hovered. Later that afternoon, we found the shack. It was half buried in the dunes, wood eaten by salt, roof sagging. We wouldn't have seen it if Chris hadn't tripped over the old stone steps. It didn't look like any kind of fishing hut or lifeguard station. There were no windows, just a door and a rusted chain across it. We cut it. Inside were shelves, dozens of them. And on every shelf were tape recorders, old ones, the kind you'd see in police interrogations. Some were cracked. Some had names scrawled on them in faded ink. Travis, Lee, Marcus, Janie, Ella. We brought 3 back to the tents. The first one didn't work. The second one whined for a bit, then nothing. The third was different. The moment we pressed play, the air changed. You know that feeling when someone's standing too close behind you? That cold tension in your spine? It was like that. The voice was male, trembling, frantic. I can still hear it. If you found this, don't stay the night. It looks safe. It's a lie. The beach moves. It moves when you sleep. The water watches. Don't look at it too long. Don't let it see you. I tried to bury the others, but it kept giving them back. Amy stopped the tape. We didn't speak for a long time. Then Chris made some joke about it being a performance piece. We nodded because the alternative was worse. That night we heard something dragging across the sand. I thought it was the wind, but when I unzipped the tent and looked out, the beach was covered in footprints. Hundreds of them, all barefoot, all going one direction, toward the shack. We stayed up until sunrise. None of us admitted how scared we were, but the silence said it all. By morning, the shack was gone. No trace of it. The dunes were smooth again, untouched. We searched the whole shoreline. Nothing. But the recorders were still in our packs. Amy wanted to leave. She begged, actually. Said she hadn't slept. Said something was whispering her name all night. I said we'd go tomorrow after one more day of filming. That was my mistake. We split up to cover more ground. I took the cliffs. Amy went inland to follow a dried creek bed. Chris stayed near camp to get B-roll of the surf. 2 hours in, my radio crackled. It was Chris. He was whispering. Said Amy had come back, but something was wrong. Her eyes weren't focusing and she was soaking wet. Her lips were blue. I ran. When I reached the tents, Amy was lying on her back, eyes wide, skin like wax. Her lips moved like she was mouthing something, but no sound came out. Chris sat beside her, pale as hell, the camera on the ground. He kept saying the same thing over and over. She came from the ocean. She came from the ocean. We tried to pack up, but every time we turned around, our gear was somewhere else. The tent poles were by the cliffs. The food packs were back at the creek bed. The trailhead was gone. I mean gone. The path we hiked in on, 6 miles of marked trees and carved stones, it wasn't there anymore. Just endless dunes in every direction. That's when Chris walked into the water. No warning, no farewell. Just stood up and walked straight in. Camera still around his neck. I screamed for him, waded in up to my waist, but he didn't even flinch. He disappeared beneath the surface like it was calling him. I dragged Amy away from the shore. She was lighter than she should have been. Her skin was wrong, rubbery, too cold. I wrapped her in everything I could find. Built a fire with driftwood, tried to keep her warm. I told myself we'd find a way out, that we'd wait until morning and see the stars, find our bearings. But the stars never came. Night fell like a curtain. No moon, no stars, just black, thick, pressing black. And the ocean, it glowed. Pale blue veins under the surface, pulsing, like something breathing. Amy sat up sometime around 3 a.m. She looked at me with eyes that weren't hers, clouded, too wide, mouth twitching. Then she spoke. Only it wasn't her voice, it was deeper, slower, like something trying to mimic human speech. You heard us. I couldn't move. My limbs were ice. You heard us. You played the voice. You brought it back. Then she smiled. Her gums were bleeding. I ran. I don't remember how far, just that I ran until my legs gave out. Slept in a patch of thorny grass. Woke with bites all over my arms. The ocean was gone when I opened my eyes, replaced by forest. Thick, choking woods that didn't match anything on our maps. But the sand was still on my boots. It took me 3 days to find a road. A logging truck picked me up. I didn't speak, couldn't. They thought I was dehydrated, hallucinating. I didn't correct them. I never found Amy's body, or Chris's. The tapes, they're gone. Confiscated by some government agency after I filed the report. They said it was a mental breakdown, stress-induced psychosis. That's what they told the press. But Langdon Beach was removed from public records 6 months later. Satellite images were scrubbed. The lighthouse erased. Still think I'm making this up? I tracked down the families of some of the names we saw on those recorders. Travis disappeared in 1998. His boat was found beached, untouched. Lee vanished during a student film project. Her classmates never came back. Ella, hiker from Vermont, found wandering in a swamp 6 months later, comatose, whispering about the water coming inside her. There's something out there. It wears the ocean like a costume. It listens, it waits. And when someone records the sound, when you play it, it remembers you. That's why I'm telling this now. On audio, so you hear it from me. So no one finds another tape on another shelf in another buried shack. So maybe, just maybe it won't come looking again. Because if it does, there won't be anyone left to tell the story next time. Hit that like button, subscribe for more terrifying true tales, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next chilling story.